Viewers, lovers of aviation history, wonderful people, welcome once again to yet another video in the series of Date with the Aero archives. We are going into the archives of aviation history and we are going to find out what happened, and in that discussion or in that journey with the Aero, or that date with the Aero archives, we are going to be doing some dancing with some Aero daredevils like we've done in the previous videos. And today, day 5, the spotlight is on Louis Bleirot, French guy Louis Bleirot. Are you okay? We're going to discover what he did and how it impacts on our lives today in today's navigation, and why we should admit Louis Bleirot into the Aviation Hall of Fame as far as Aero daredevils are concerned. Why was he an Aero daredevil? Are you okay? And before we jump into the objectives, let's not forget to like, to share, to comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Okay, and tell a friend to tell another friend to tell another friend that Captain Amoah is here with another banger. Okay, so you've seen Louis Bleirot on your screens, all through your screen scrolls. You've seen who Louis Bleirot is. Today we're going to look at what did he do, what's about him that makes him an Aero daredevil, and what did he really do that is impacting our navigation today. So let us do a few bios. So let's look at our objectives and see whether we are on point with our objectives. Thus, learners should continue to appreciate and link the adventures to the evolution of aviation. So these Aero daredevils between 1904 and 1914, what's their link? My objective is to tell you the link between them and today's aviation. Number 2, we're going to look at the bios of these guy, that's Louis Bleirot, and also what criteria are we using, or how are we using this criteria to admit Louis Bleirot into the Hall of Fame of Aero daredevils. So we're going to look at the bio of Louis Bleirot, who lived between 1872 and 1936. Okay, he was born in Cambrai, France, and his initial occupation was he was an engineer and a skilled businessman. The business that he was doing after being an engineer was to sell automobile accessories, or you can say spare parts, as we normally say in this part of our world, spare parts. His first love in aviation began in 1902, where he designed something we call the flapping machine. Are you okay? That was his first love in aviation. Then in 1906, he joined the prominent Aero experimenters. Are you okay? Remember, like I told you, in as much as we had engineers and other guys manufacturing aircraft to compete with the Flyer One, we also had a little experimenters on the side. They would just take an airfoil, do a lot of studies on it, and find out its reaction with moving air, etc. Are you okay? Then, somewhere along the line, he was able, at that time, to fly as high as 1,650 feet. Are you okay? 1,650 feet in his Bleirot 7 aircraft. So, you know, he was an engineer, an experimentalist, and was also a manufacturer too as well. Can you imagine? Of course, being an engineer, all he had to do was just shift his focus from automobiles to aircraft, which he did. So the aircraft that he did, he was able to go as high as 1,650 meters. If you remember previous history, the Aero daredevils between 1904 and 1914 were competing the Flyer One as far as speed, altitude, and distance was concerned. So at that point in time, he was almost like we should say holding the record, because his aircraft could go as high as 1,650 feet. Are you okay? Now, there's something interesting about his personality before I go on to the final thing he did that we are using as a criteria to admit him. There's something about his personality. He had a supporting wife who was kind of running his business on the side and also taking care of him anytime he got injured. Are you beginning to see who he is? He was an accident-prone, if I say, human being. You know, everything he designed, not all of them ended up in successful, feats. Some ended in crash landings which caused an injury here, or a crack of a limb there, or maybe a scratch on the skull here. He was that kind of accident-prone guy who did not want to give up on his passion for flying and competing. He still wanted, in the midst of everything, when he gets hospitalized and he's discharged and he feels fit, guess what? The next thing he's going to do is going to push his adrenaline a little bit further. Okay, he was that kind of person. So with his personality, he had a supporting wife, you know, who used to take care of his business and take care of him anytime he's incapacitated due to any of these crashes or minor crashes he had. And also, he was a very relentless guy, a go-getter. Are you okay? As we've seen in him. This was the kind of life he was leading. He tests something, he's in an experimental thing, he goes and tests it out, it doesn't end up well, then he gets a bit injured, his wife takes care of him, and he's back in the sky. Then one day, the British newspaper called the Daily Mail, those of you who've lived in England before, the Daily Mail, put out a cash prize, okay, another cash prize for anyone who could cross the English Channel. The English Channel is the sea that separates the continent of Europe and the United Kingdom. Okay, it's just a short stretch of flight. So, like I said, remember Henry Farman, what he did, 27 miles in between two cities of France, and now somebody is saying, you know what, we want somebody who can cross the English Channel. That's either you move from any part in the UK over the English Channel to France, or anywhere in France, cross the English Channel and arrive in the UK. There was a price, £1,000. Can you imagine in those days, £1,000? At that time, it used to translate to $4,850. Can you imagine this cash? Even today, is more of an incentive for somebody to even abandon his job and go and compete for that price. So there was this competition out there. Anyone who could cross the English Channel, you know, this is your cash. Nobody dared at that time except him and one guy called Latham. Latham, as our history records have it, was the first. So at that time, like we told you, everybody was just waiting for weather to clear. If the weather clears and they are almost like a cloudless skies, then you go and do the competition. Otherwise, you fly through clouds, you don't see anything on the ground, and anything can happen. Latham, or about 2 days before this day, it was 2 days before 25th July, before Bleirot did his. And I'll tell you why Bleirot did his on 25th July. So let's say in one of those days in July, Latham, thought that the weather had cleared enough, so he got airborne, competing for this prize way before Louis Bleirot. Are you okay? But history had it that along the way he had so much challenges in terms of weather, and things like that, and also weather and technical issues precluded Latham from completing his journey over the English Channel. So he kind of crash landed on the sea. And interestingly enough, when the rescue team went out for him, he was just, if I should say, as we say in our parlance, he was just at his somewhere enjoying a cigarette. Are you okay? Obviously, he was not part of the competition, so he was out. And the only person left who really competed for, or who went for this competitive prize was Louis Bleirot. Guess what? 2 days before that time, whilst he was servicing his aircraft for the day of the event, he had a bent foot. We've already spoken about him. He's accident prone. Whilst he was servicing, he spilled engine oil, hot engine oil on his foot, and he had a bent foot, but he still decided or insisted that he was going to go for this cash prize. So on this day, on Sunday, 25th July 1909, Sunday 25th July 1909, he woke up in the morning and he was just waiting for the weather to clear, and as luck had it, the weather cleared off, and he sat in his aircraft. It was very cold though, but he was really dressed for the occasion, and he got airborne. Just about some minutes after airborne, guess what? Clouds started coming in again. Remember, those of you who know the geography of Europe, the temperate areas, even though it's summer, somewhere around UK and France, are you okay? Summer doesn't mean it's a whole cloudless sky throughout the summer period. You could have periods of intermittent periods of low clouds, and a bit of drizzle, a bit of rain, then a bit of the sun. Sometimes it's not all that stable, okay? So during that time, that's what happened to him. As soon as he got airborne, the clouds, if I said, zoomed in and blocked his visibility. So for the first maybe 20 to 15 minutes, he was flying blind. Can you imagine? But he was going for a prize. So he was all determined. He didn't give up. Sometimes you can do something we call scud running. Are you okay? Where you just go a little bit below the clouds to see whether you can see ground. The clouds are that low, you go a little bit. That's if you know your terrain. Are you okay? That there are no obstacles there. But well, History had it that about 10 to 20 minutes into his flight, he had an opening and he could see the coast of Dover. That's about the southeastern part of UK. And he realized that he was way off course. Remember, he was way off course because, of course, he had no flight briefing on the weather and other things about. Apart from the fact that the clouds will challenge you, the other things you have to think about, strong winds and other things, and how your aircraft can cope with the wind, the winds. But he had none of that. He was just moving just to cross the channel and get his prize. So he realized he was way off course and he had a lot of winds to battle to get on course. Are you okay? He finally arrived in Croydon after doing a 36-minute flight. He finally arrived in Croydon, and at that point in time, due to the winds and other things, he couldn't make really what we call a normal landing, or if you say a smooth landing. It was also not a complete crash. It was somewhere in between a normal landing and a crash. Are you okay? And that broke off his propeller and also broke off his undercarriage. His undercarriage is the device under the aircraft that houses the layman's term, the aircraft ties. Are you okay? And he also broke that one too. But it went well into the history books. It went well into the history books as well. The first person to cross the English Channel. They didn't see that semi-crash landing as, a failure or something. No, they still recorded it in the books that he was the first guy to cross the English Channel and he won that prize. We'll later on see what impact that flight made in today's aviation and why we are admitting him into the Hall of Fame of Aero Daredevil. So like I said, why is he an Aero Daredevil? We'll start with that one first, then we'll talk about his impact on today's aviation. An Aero Daredevil, remember, the matrix of the aviation maestro multimedia for categorizing some people in aviation history as Aero Daredevils was they took an uncalculated risk. And when we say they took an uncalculated risk, what do we mean? They had no hindsight. Nobody had done whatever they did before them. And of course, if nobody did whatever they were going to do, they have nothing to look on to say, you know what, maybe this can happen when I'm going to do mine because of what I have just seen. Are you okay? They had none of that. So of course, if you don't have hindsight, you will not have foresight. And if you don't have foresight, you will not have insight. Today, so many flights cross the English Channel. You can even Google and find out the traffic over the English Channel from UK, over the English Channel to France or to Belgium or to Germany or to Holland or wherever. You know, things are happening over there. So many flights are happening. Even in the COVID-19 season, we have so many flights crossing there, but not the way Bleirot did. Not the way that he did. Louis just woke up on a Sunday morning, you know, after servicing his aircraft some days before, looked at the weather, hopped onto the aircraft, and off he went. Nobody does that today. And here again too, you see on the screens an airline's dispatch office. Like we said, a pilot reports to a dispatch office and he has detailed and concise briefing on one, the weather. Weather at the airport that he's taking off from, en route and at the destination, and fuel is calculated based on so many things. That's the trip that he's going to cover plus contingencies or extras. Extras that you can't land at this airport, how are you going to circle and divert, everything is calculated. And all these things are briefed to the pilot at dispatch. Okay, Louis Bleirot had none of this. He just hopped onto his aircraft, wore his suit, and off he went, even on a bent foot. Today, no aviation medical examiner worth his salt is going to release a captain or renew his medical license if you have a bent foot because you are almost incapacitated. Are you okay? So you know this risk that he was taking was all to, of course, compete for that prize and also to outdo the Wright brothers Flyer 1 aircraft. So he's a daredevil because he had no hindsight. Nobody had ever crossed the English Channel before him. So of course, if he didn't have any hindsight, there was no foresight for him to say, look, you know what, in the mornings the temperatures are so, and if the temperatures are so, this is the implication it has on the cloud covers. And if it has an implication on cloud covers, that's the implication on my visibility. I'm limited to do this visibility. The law says I should do that. None of those. Are you okay? And obviously, if you don't have hindsight and you don't have foresight, you never have insight. Insight, I'm trying to say, is that training manuals to do what you are supposed to do. Checklists to do all these things you are supposed to do. Aviation knowledge. Do you have aviation meteorological knowledge? Did he have aviation meteorological knowledge? Any pilot, before he receives his pilot license, would have done something like about 30 hours of aviation meteorology, where we go to the ins and outs of meteorology, starting from what temperature is, Celsius, Fahrenheit, all the way to weather forecasts, understanding the reports, understanding the symbols, and so many things. Are you okay? But he had none of that. So because he didn't have hindsight, he didn't have foresight, and he didn't have insight, guess what? He's already admitted into the fame of Aero daredevils. Are you okay? And because that risk was very much uncalculated. You know, for you to fly and realize you are even off course. He was even lucky. Some people, by the time they realized they were off course, they were already in trees. And they had already flown into trees or flown into people's bedroom by the time they realized they were off course. Because for you to have cloud cover, cloud obscuring your visibility, and all of a sudden you realize you are off course, you didn't hit anything. That was almost a miracle. Of course, he was over the sea, so we don't expect him to hit anything. But people have tried these kind of experiments on land, and they've ended up in hills, mountains, and what have you. So he really took an uncalculated risk. And the question is, what's the impact of Bleirot on our lives today? Of course, his first experiment with his aircraft Bleirot 7 of climbing to 1,600 feet got other guys to also do same. Are you okay? Later on, it started to catch the eyes of the military guys, which I'll be telling you more in videos to come. Are you okay? The military guys started to observe these guys who were doing their little Aero daredeviling experiments here and there, and they realized that no, we also need some of these aircrafts for reconnaissance missions. Are you okay? So he caught the eye of the military, and later I'll show you the link between catching the eye of the military, World War I, post-World War I, and today. So obviously he was part of those trying to push the frontiers a bit further. So in terms of altitude, he succeeded in outdoing the Wright brothers and other people before him. Then also with this cross-country flight, trust me, today's cross-country, like I told you, is not the way Bleirot did. It's so much to move from one airport to another airport. We even have a regulation for it called Air Navigation Services. Are you okay? That's the body that sees to the safe transport of aircrafts from one airport to the other, using so much complex infrastructure, trained personnel, systems, and regulations. Today, that's what it takes to move an aircraft from one airport to the other. And those of you who will be joining us on Navigation Nostalgia, we are going to go into the nitty-gritties. We are going to even talk about the pilot fitness. Before a pilot says that I am fit to go and fly, trust me, not with bent foot and oil spills here or a broken limb. No, we are going to walk our way through the I am safe. We call it the I am safe checklist. That's for the pilot, for the aircraft, for the environment. Weather studies. We are going to understand weather reports. Whenever the dispatcher gives you the weather report, do you understand it? Its implication on your takeoff. And we have manuals for all those things, that if the visibility drops a little bit low and you take off, what do you do? Things like that. We have everything. All because of these guys who really took that uncalculated risk. And that has helped a lot, so much. So you can Google any YouTube video and you see flights even over the Atlantic Ocean, flights over the English Channel and the Bay of Bengal are not done the way Bleirot did today. So let's see whether we've met the objectives. We said we should appreciate the link between these guys, that's the guys who came in 1904 to 1914, to the evolution of aviation. Yes, all these things that these guys, remember, they were making history, documentation, and kind of writing manuals for posterity. So obviously there's a great link between what Bleirot did, because he was the first guy anyway. There's a great link between him and us today. Also, we looked a bit about his bios. We looked at how he started off as an engineer and a skilled businessman, and how he found aviation as his first love. We looked at that. Then we looked at the criteria to admit or invite him into the Hall of Fame of Aero daredevils. And we realized that he's passed. He passed because he didn't have hindsight, he didn't have foresight, and he didn't have insight. So he passed. Are you okay? Whether you like it or not, he passed. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this video with Bleirot, and you catch us on other videos where we are going to talk about so many people and what they did and why we should admit them. I've enjoyed you so much, and take care of yourself and each other. See you on the next video.